Hey yo guys, what's up and welcome back to Toe Tags and Metal Reviews, and today we're getting our first impressions of the new releases from Nails, Wintersun, Oceano, and Leprous. So we got 4 albums to cover today, and I'm just gonna pass it forward to you. You said you started your day with Nails, and I wanna know what you think of Nails. This is Every Bridge Burning.
So Nails' album, Every Bridge Burning, takes the new record, the new title for shortest LP we've ever covered on the channel.
Right.
17 minutes, 47 seconds.
Short.
I didn't think we were gonna hit sub 20, but we did. These guys
with 10 tracks too.
That's 10 tracks, so these guys hit a new PB for this speed run, because that's a short album. The longest song is 3 minutes and 14 seconds. Mm-hmm. The longest.
Right.
So, you know, okay, this one's quick. As soon as it started, like, this guitar tone they had is like, I kind of described it in my notes here as like a ripping guitar tone. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is it almost feels like it's tearing your speakers apart, but in a good way. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, this is like...
That's good metal.
Like, good, sharp metal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, this is gonna cut right through your speakers. You know, we mean business. First song I wrote about was the fun riff in Punishment Map. I thought that was pretty cool. And as I was listening, I was like, you know what? I could see these guys having a show recorded on 856. You know, and I wouldn't be surprised if that's already been done. It just kind of
like Liquid Radio.
That's like a YouTube channel that records a bunch of like hardcore shows and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if a band like this has been featured on that channel.
Yeah, I could see that.
So it would be cool if there was. I guess I'll take a look afterwards. The title track has a pretty cool riff in the second half, and I like the tracks on this album that have groove, and there's a few. But there's 2 tracks that like super duper stood out to me. The first one, which for me is the best one on the album, is Give Me the Painkiller. Mm-hmm. The guitar lick in that song is awesome. And it was cool hearing that with a double kick. That song in particular is more on the thrashier side,
yes,
where the rest of the album is kind of more, you know, like death metal or death metal adjacent. So it was an interesting change of pace. Like, wow, they're thrashing on this one. That's pretty cool. Mm-hmm. And it also had a pretty fun solo. And then the track right after, Lacking the Ability to Process Empathy, has got this syncopated guitar riff on top of a drum groove that's playing straight ahead. This is really cool because a lot of the time these days, when you're playing syncopated riffs, the drums are matching that. So to get the disconnect of the syncopated here but not here is pretty cool. And usually you kind of have them play on top of each other in terms of like, okay, this guy's playing straight ahead and this is syncopated, and they either flip.
Were they playing the same time signatures?
I believe it was the same time signature. It's just...
Or was it a polyrhythm? That would be more interesting.
That would be cool too, but I feel like it was just the syncopated guitar riff on top of the drums, which are basically keeping time.
Yeah.
It sounded cool. I like that. Another thing I noticed, there are a lot of guitar squeal transitions where it just whee into the next track.
Yeah.
So it's like kind of like they just did this whole thing off the floor. We don't give a fuck. Just go.
Yeah, they could have.
I mean,
17 minutes. It's not that long. You can jam that out.
You could probably jam out the whole album. Yeah, you know what? You're not wrong.
Yeah.
So, you know, I was concerned coming in that like, oh my God, 17 minutes? Like that, what?
Yeah.
But there's some good stuff in here, and I feel like there's multiple songs that stand out, which is really impressive considering how short it is.
Yeah.
But I feel like overall this album is really good if you want some just hard shit.
Yeah.
I'm angry right now. I'm going into the gym. Let's put on something hard that really gets the blood pumping. This is a great album for that.
Yeah, I think it's short, but it's really good. It really hits the mark. And even though the songs are short, there's still a lot packed into them. They still feel like full songs because they cut out all the bullshit.
Yeah.
They just go from one part to the next part to the next part to the next part, and they're done. And they don't fuck around with things like choruses or trying to be catchy, hooky, and they just get it done.
I guess it's one of the most straightforward albums.
It's straightforward as fuck, and that's a really good thing in a lot of people's eyes. So I liked a lot of the things Stevie Fish already mentioned. I'll just kind of rehash a little bit of them. Yeah, the thrashiness of this album, it's grindcore-y, it's got tons of skank beats and that kind of thing. Hardcore fans would like this, I think. But it does have some more of that, you know, riffy kind of stuff, like you mentioned, Give Me the Painkiller, which to me, those riffs in that song sounded like Megadeth riffs. And you said it sounded thrashy to you, so that makes a lot of sense. But it's cool that it has those type of elements that still stand out despite being super fast, super aggressive, super in your face. But overall, really fun album. It's just really short. So it's like one of those things, how often can you listen to it before you burn out on it? Yeah. That's the real challenge for an album like this, right? It's great at the beginning, but what's the lifelong, effects of this gonna be? Who knows?
Yeah, that's definitely a challenge. Up next is Time 2 by Wintersun. I'm going to pass the floor over to Vile. What did you think of that record?
So I've never really checked out Wintersun before. I might have heard a track here or there perhaps, but my first time really diving into them. And they sounded basically as I expected, except it sounded a little more blackened than I was expecting. I kind of figured this was a power metal band based on their imagery and stuff like that. But the vocals kind of led me down a bit of a black metal-y kind of mind frame. I'm not saying it sounded like black metal, but that's kind of what I got from it. The biggest takeaway from this album for me was the endurance of the drummer, because his double bass chops are just insane. The guy plays for a long time. The double bass is just kicking. The song called Storm, which is track number 5, it's only a 6-track album. This track's 12 minutes long, and this guy's feet are going almost the whole time. Except for the last 2 minutes where it's just basically noise and nature sounds. And it's annoying because they do that again on the last track, 2 minutes of noise and nature sounds, which is really weird to do it twice in the album back to back. Other than that, I mean, the album's got some cool guitaring, some cool soloing. You take a song like, a track like Ominous Clouds, which is an instrumental, but it's basically a glorified solo. It's 2 minutes and 21 seconds long, and the guy's just riffing and noodling the whole time. Like, it's basically a glorified solo, but I like that kind of stuff, right? That's cool. I also like the solo in One with the Shadows. And yeah, overall, the album, it felt cool. There just wasn't a lot of really like gripping stuff for me, other than like going, wow, this guy's feet are fast and he's got crazy endurance, and wow, this guy's a pretty good guitar player. But other than that, like the songs weren't like, put me in your playlist right now kind of thing. Like, so decent, but overall, I'm not like, it didn't make a fan out of me. Let me just put it that way. So,
well, I was in a similar boat to you for Wintersun. I know I've heard of this band, but I don't really think I listened to them. And looking at the album, okay, 6 songs, multiple long ones. I'm thinking we're getting, a big prog adventure, and that we kind of got. To me, it seemed more along the lines of power prog, but not necessarily like Angra. They're more on the power metal side of the equation.
Yeah, definitely more on power metal side.
So, but I was also kind of thinking like the heavier parts kind of remind me of Symphony X, which is maybe where some of the power prog comparisons happen. Because Symphony X is a prog band with a little bit of power metal sprinkled in here and there.
Yep.
So I thought that was interesting, but generally I did enjoy this album. The intro track, Fields of Snow, is 4 minutes long, which is quite long for just an intro track, but I thought it was beautiful. I thought it was a very pretty track, and I'm thinking like, wow, under most circumstances, I would not like an intro track to be that long, but these guys did a really good job with this one, and I was impressed. And then it leads into the Way of the Fire really well, and I think the transitions in general for this album are very, very nicely done. Very smooth, it all makes sense. Ominous Clouds I thought was really cool as an interlude, basically as a guitar solo. I thought that was really cool. Mm-hmm. One thing I wish they did was at least the last 2 minutes of Storm just be another interlude track, even if it is just the sound of rain. I don't care, don't have that tacked on to the ending of the song where it very definitively ends just to hear rain sounds, and it's not the end of the album. At least with the end of the album and they have it, that's okay because it's the ending.
It makes sense.
You can get away with that.
Yeah.
But to have it like happen twice like that is really awkward.
It was weird.
And it kind of also felt like Silver Leaves, which is the last track, didn't really need to be 13 minutes long.
No.
Especially
right after a 12-minute song.
It kind of meanders around this waltz for a while, and I feel like Storm would have been a more effective closer for how powerful that song is. I noticed with the mix of this album, the vocals are behind everyone and the drums were very much in the front. And it wasn't like a huge problem, but it was a bit of a weird thing to make the vocals a little bit harder to hear. But the band is like super duper in front, but the band sounds great. Mm-hmm. And one of the highlights for me for this entire album are the guitar solos. Amazing stuff. Like the solo section in The Way of the Fire has cool drum groove going on. And then the solo just keeps going more wild, and I'm just thinking like, this is some John Petrucci shit. I love it.
Yeah.
Super duper fun. Every time the guitar gets to go wild, like they go all the way, and I loved it. But overall, it was a pretty good album. Like, for my first time hearing a Wintersun record, I enjoyed it. I guess I'll have to check out Time 1 and see how much this resembles that one, because Time 1 came out in like 2012.
Yeah.
So 12 years later.
Check that out. It'd be interesting to hear the progression of that. And I think they had an album or two in between as well.
I think they had one in between. I think this band only has 4 albums, and the first one was in 2004.
Oh.
So I don't know what happened, but the new one's pretty good.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to Living Chaos by Oceano.
Oceano.
So Oceano, we have not covered on the channel before. Actually, we haven't covered any of these bands on the channel before. I don't think we have.
Oh, yeah. You know what? I think
this is a quad cherry pop at right now, which is crazy to think about it. Anyways, Living Chaos by Oceano. So I've checked out Oceano before. You know, I know a lot of people love this band, you know, classic deathcore. They've never clicked with me. They just never clicked with me. This album, I put it on with a low bar expectation, and I was actually pleasantly surprised. There's a lot of stuff in this album that I thought was really cool. And I might be mistaken about some of the stuff I'm gonna say here because I'm not quite sure what I was hearing at certain times, but I'm gonna give it to you anyway. So, there's a few things I noticed, right? So, Darkness Rising, track number 3, I felt like there was some synth that was introduced, but it felt like it was mimicking a female vocal harmony. And it was subtle and it was hard to hear, and I was like, what is that? But whatever it was adding a lot of body to the sound. I thought that's really cool. I really like that. But just not sure what it was. A couple tracks later in Wounds Never Healed, it has this like EDM type of riff that like just kind of renders into the background, but then it comes back later on in the song, and then it comes back later on in the bridge again. But just having this like EDM style riff in this song. Also, this song's more like a mid-tempo song too, which kind of set it apart from the other track. So overall, this track number 5, kind of just stood out for multiple reasons, which I thought, oh, this is pretty unique. Moving on, I got a bunch of notes here, but I just want to talk about the interesting things I think I heard. Not the last song. Track number 8, that's what it is. Living Chaos. This one, I feel like I was hearing glockenspiel on this one. It's subtle, but I feel like I was hearing glockenspiel, and I thought, what deathcore band is bringing out glockenspiel? I don't know.
Got this mean deathcore album. Break out the glockenspiel.
I thought I heard glockenspiel. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not quite sure, but I just appreciate the fact that I'm hearing all these different little things throughout the songs. It's not like I'm hearing, you know, I'm not like hearing the EDM riff on a bunch of songs. I'm not hearing glockenspiel on a bunch of songs. Like each one's getting their own little personality sprinkled in, and that's what I'm always looking for when I'm listening to music, is things that just sound different and unique. The parts that didn't sound different and unique were still pretty cool. You get songs like Mass Produced, which is track number 2, just hits good in an old school way. Just awesome double bass on it, the vocals are on point, it's really just doing a good thing. Track number 7, The Price of Pain, just an awesome bass lick to open the song, and just good deathcore after that. Overall, I had a good time listening to this album. I was pleasantly surprised, and I'll definitely be revisiting it again at a certain point in the future because it impressed me. I was expecting something to go, yeah, it was fine, but no, it's good. It's a good album.
Now, this is my first time ever checking out Oceano, and going in, I kind of had a similar feeling as you, but not because I've checked them out before, but because you mentioned that, oh, you know,
they're kind of the run-of-the-mill.
They seem run-of-the-mill, so I'm like, okay, I guess this is a run-of-the-mill deathcore band. That's the only thing I've ever heard about them, so that's all I had. But then I thought, wow, that's not the case here. There's this, like, the clean guitar stuff that's ever present on this album kind of starts in Wasted Life, and it kind of reminded me of something you'd hear Fit for an Autopsy do. That was the first thing that I heard. I'm like, yeah, it sounds like some kind of melodic concept that band would do, which I like. I'd say a comparison to Fit for an Autopsy is a compliment.
Yeah.
Because that band is awesome. So, you got, and then it starts in Mass Produced as well. Like the song starts like that, and what this album does a lot is that they introduce a lot of clean guitar parts that are the kind of parts you would see in a lot of modern metalcore. I'm thinking like Silent Planet and stuff like that. So it's interesting you have that on top of the brutal deathcore stuff that's already present on this album. The mix of that is really, really nice. I think that's pretty cool. So, the riffs, the riffs in Mass Produced, I was enjoying that. It takes until the second half, the clean stuff in the beginning, to come back, but then it just explodes at the end with this double kick, which definitely caught me by surprise. I thought that was cool. Darkness Rising, I feel like mixed in some of the melodic stuff a little bit better. It kind of feels like it's really woven into the song rather than being, we're gonna have this section here and that section here, and that's it.
Yeah, for sure, yeah.
I don't know if you noticed this during this song. This is so weird, but so cool. Near the end, the drummer stops playing the kick. He's still playing this groove, he just doesn't hit the kick.
So he's playing on hi-hat and snare, or
he's just like cymbal and snare.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what?
I didn't notice, but that's interesting. I'm definitely gonna go back and check
I'm listening,
that out.
I'm like, where'd the kick go? It just left. Whoa, that's
I
interesting.
wonder if that was maybe a post problem.
Or what if it was just a creative decision?
It could be a creative decision.
Just to have it at the end like that? Like, that makes sense. Like, it's a sensible
It
idea.
almost sounds like somebody was editing and they accidentally cut out the bass drum at the end of the track, and didn't notice it afterwards, and they published it. Something crazy.
You know,
I don't know, I'd have to listen to it to hear if it sounds right or not right.
If that's the case, you could consider that a happy accident, because
Does it
it made
sound good?
for a really interesting and cool effect.
Wow.
Like, it was just like, huh? But I like it. Like, interesting.
And we're talking like a couple bars. Like I didn't catch this at all.
Yeah,
so.
I think it even comes back at the very, very end, but for like a few bars in the ending section, it just leaves.
Wow.
Like, it just walks out the door.
That's Darkness Rising? That's interesting.
Yeah, I thought that was cool. Wounds Never Healed also has the melodic stuff. It's got the electronic stuff in there, as you mentioned already, and I thought that was pretty cool and unique for that song. Interlude is pretty cool. Price of Pain brings it back like a sack of bricks. That's a relentless song. Overall, a pretty cool album. I think an album like this is definitely some of the better deathcore you're gonna hear nowadays, because a lot of it sounds so similar to each other. These guys did creative stuff, made bold choices, and actually like breathed life into this genre, which we will always praise bands like this for doing.
That's right.
So, it's a good album.
All right, let's talk about Melodies of Atonement by Leprous.
Ooh.
So, kicking this off, let's just say TV Fish is a big fan of this band. I am not really a big fan of this band, only because somebody, I think it was you actually, said, "Hey, check out this band or whatever," like a couple years ago, and I checked it out and didn't like it. I thought it was ass, whatever. I didn't like it. So I had zero hype for this going. I'm like, oh god, Leprous, whatever. Put the album on, and I'm like, all right, this is good. I'm digging this. This is, some great syncopation, nice clean vocals, vocal riffing. Like, this guy's really trying to showcase his voice and stuff.
Einar is like one of the best in the game. He's so good.
Yeah, and he's just, it's all clean vocals except for maybe one or two things which TV Fish will mention, because we talked about this earlier, but it's just, it's doing some good stuff for me. I'm digging it, right? I'm vibing with it. I'm like, okay, this is pretty good. About halfway through the album, it starts to taper off on me. And I feel like I was getting bored because the songs all kind of follow a similar pattern where they kind of start off slow and then they pick up and there's a grand like bam, and then they kind of flip back and forth. And they all kind of did the same structure kind of thing. And that's fine in a lot of ways, but when you're listening to an album and you're critiquing an album, it kind of gets a little bit boring and feels repetitive. So I feel like my issue is with the song structures. First half of the album strong, second half of the album weak. If I had listened to it in the inverse, maybe I would have had a different feeling, I don't know. Anyways, some highlights. Track number 4, let's start with I Hear the Sirens. In this one, it sounds like he starts singing in head voice, which I think is interesting. Then he switches to falsetto, which is also interesting. And he goes back to his regular voice as well. He's just showing off, but it's good. It's amazing. I'm a sucker for good singers, and this guy really has good chops, good pipes. Instrumentally, the song sounds like progressive doom metal. Like it's got like a really doomy atmosphere to it, but it's also progressive in its syncopated nature and that kind of thing. So I thought that was a really cool thing where you have this beautiful singing on top of this doomy progressive instrumental, and it's just a juxtaposition that just works really, really well. Track number 6, this is on the second half of the album where it kind of started falling off for me, but I still noticed some things. This one kind of reminded me of like bebop or beatnik kind of music. Like you
Which track?
Track number 6, Limbo.
Oh,
You know,
okay, yeah,
Dave Brubeck's Take 5. You're probably familiar with exactly.
Of course, yeah.
That's what this reminded me of. Just strip all the horns away and maybe like darken it down a little bit. That's what this reminded me of. And there's a couple tracks that kind of gave me that vibe. It's like it's jazz oriented. I don't know if jazz is the right thing, but it's in that realm.
Well, they're swinging in Limbo, so that's where you get a lot of like the jazz feeling, is that they're swinging, but what's cool is that the drumming is happening just on quarter notes, so that you don't hear the drumming swing, but everyone else is, so you get this cool juxtaposition. But then when the drums start playing fills, they're swinging that too, so it's like, whoa, it's just small spices that he's throwing in there. Super cool stuff.
I just don't know if there's another more proper genre to compare it to. Okay, so you remember old side-scroller beat-em-ups like Final Fight and Streets of Rage and those kind of games? There's always like this level where you're playing in like a nightclub or a lounge or something like that, and it has this like music.
This is what would be playing?
This is what would be playing. This is that kind of thing, right? So there's a few songs that are like that, which is another thing I was like, oh, there's another song that sounds like that. Oh, there's another song that sounds
like
Final
Fight nightclub song.
Yeah, exactly. So we're old school gamers, so we can reference stuff like that. But yeah, another thing that I'll say just before I pass the floor is a lot of this album was reminding me of the Zeal and Ardor album that I just spent the last week listening to, because they dropped Grief last week. We didn't do any videos on it or anything, but I listened to it a bunch of times. I thought it was a good album. This album has a lot of things on it that was reminding me of that as well. So it's kind of in that ballpark in a sense. But one more thing I want to mention before I pass the floor. I know I just said that, but this is part of it. Track number 2, Atonement. So this is the one that kind of reminded me of Zeal and Ardor at the beginning. And I was like, I'm not sure how I feel about this. I feel like this is interesting, but it's not quite doing anything for me. He's doing some vocal riffing. He's hitting some higher notes and things like that. So the song plays, the album goes on, whatever. I gave the album a second spin. When Atonement came on and played again, I don't know what happened, but I had a switch. This song slaps. This song is really fucking good. And it's the first song I put on my car when I left work, and I cranked it up and just fucking let it go, man. Because it's got this riff that reminds me of, and I'm gonna sound like an idiot doing this, but that that thing, like that horn that they do at like clubs and stuff.
What, the air horn?
The air horn. Yeah, thing. So the air horn, I couldn't think of what that was called. But the riff on this reminds me of that. It doesn't sound like it, but it's got it. If you hear the riff, you'll know what I'm talking about.
Interesting.
But I was like, that's fucking sick. And they played this riff 2 or 3 times throughout the song, and it's just really fucking good. So that is a huge highlight for me on this album. But again, it's in the first half where the album I feel is the strongest, and it's weaker at the second half. That has me a bit concerned. But either way, I was definitely more impressed with it after the fact than I was going into it, because my bar was down here when I was going into it. So I'm actually very, very pleased at what I heard.
Well, I mean, I'll say this. The only real criticism I have of this album is what you already mentioned, where every song has a very similar structure, where it kind of starts quiet, then the band comes in, hits you like a truck, and it's like you're glued to the wall at this point by how many trucks hit you like that on this album. And it gets a bit repetitive that way. But other than, that's really my only, real criticism. Everything else on this album is amazing. I loved it. I'm a big Leprous fan. Loved their stuff for a while. Years ago, I found Cole, which is one of their older albums. Phenomenal. One of my favorite albums ever. And I've been following them since discovering that album, 6, 7, 8 years ago or so. It's been a while. But, so I was very excited for this record. I checked out the first 2 singles. I didn't actually check out Like a Sunken Ship when it came out, which was kind of fun because checking it out for the first time, hearing it on the record, was amazing. And I guess I might as well start with that song. So I by the time we got to that song, it felt like I was starting to feel the effects of like, okay, similar structure, but then when this song did it just did it different. It was awesome, and the screams are back. Einar screamed for the first time. I've heard him scream here for the first time in ages, because I know they started to go more of a almost prog rock direction with their sound over the years. So to hear him scream again was super duper awesome, and I may have missed something from the last few albums. It's been a while since I've
But his
listened.
screams are few and far between, basically.
At this point, they definitely are.
Yeah.
In the first few records, there was a lot more of it.
I don't think he needs to either, though. I don't.
He doesn't need it, but
this
it's
band
like
doesn't have to have that. I think
I
they have
think
a good sound without that.
they do, but it gets even stronger when they sprinkle it in. So this song gets stronger, the fact that it's there, just the one.
Yeah.
And it's like, whoa, that makes it even more powerful.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
But Silently Walking Alone, the synth in that is so uncomfortable in a good way. You hear that in the background like, oh, what is that? Like it kind of feels awkward. And then the band comes in, makes it feel a little bit less awkward, but it's still this eerie presence happening. And that's one of the biggest words I have to describe this album is eerie.
It does have an eerie vibe to it.
It's beautiful. Einar's voice is incredible. The jams on it are amazing. The band sounds great. But there's something unsettling with some of these songs and off-putting in a good way. And I found that really interesting. Like, wow, they're going for something almost creepy here, but there's a beauty to it. And a lot of the songs give off that feeling, and I found that pretty cool and interesting. Like, I kept writing that out. Atonement, the vocal harmonies that come in the second half, gorgeous. Loved those. I hear the sirens. There's a synth stuff in the background, which is played backwards. Like, you know, when someone writes something, then they learn it backwards, play it backwards, then they reverse that, so it's playing the original riff, but the notes are being played in reverse. Love when bands do that. Love that I heard it here. I'm a big fan of that kind of stuff. You know, lately a lot of people have been like posting on Reddit, oh, you know that one song and then the part where you're like on this astral journey? This whole album is the astral journey. Like, that's what it feels like. Every song you just go to this place and it's like, whoa, this is incredible. Love it. It keeps you on the edge of your seat, you know, the whole time. And then I feel like with the structure being, you know, always kind of just leading to this big explosion, you're waiting like, oh, here it comes, here we go, wow, the band comes in. I love the guitar riff in the background of Faceless as the drums start to get a little bit more active. I thought that was pretty cool. But yeah, I think Leprous makes such powerful music. Like, especially with Einar's vocal performances, just always knocking it out of the park. And I feel like he was really flexing his ability on this record, just completely going off, but the whole band sounds great too.
And he's not doing it like ridiculously either. He's not just like...
No, it's not vocal Olympics. It's just like, I'm gonna bring out everything I got.
But he's picking the right moments to do it too, is what I'm saying, right? Like, he's doing a lot of different things, but it's not just, he's not just doing, vocal Olympics, constantly doing every song, every 5 seconds, doing runs and things like this. But when he does it, it hits nicely because he's picking the right spots. And that's, to me, that's a sign of a good vocalist.
Yeah,
like, not just the ability, but knowing when and where.
Yeah,
that's important.
I really enjoyed this album on the first listen. I'm a big Leprous fan. I approve.
All right, well, we're going to review Melodies of Atonement for the week, and we'll be back next week to give you guys a review. But one final fun fact, I'm not sure if you know this or not, did you know that members of Leprous are actually Eshawn's live band?
Oh, I didn't know that. I know he actually featured on one of their songs before. Like, Eshawn himself featured on a Leprous song. I didn't know they played with him.
So if you go see Eshawn, you're actually seeing Leprous in secret. Well, at least some of the members. Anyways, cool. Guys, that's it for this video. Leave us a comment below and let us know what you think of these 4 new releases today. Pretty wide spectrum of genres and styles today. And let us know what you think. Subscribe if you guys are new to the channel. I'm Vile Self.
I'm TV Fish.
We'll see you guys on the next one.